take that one.
Right. Okay, so please move to here because there is and for your microphone,
Microphone.
put it
Hello. Oh, wow.
because there is wine and it's difficult to hear you. Okay, and then on the record. And so,
All right, good morning. I can tell I'm on the
Got
mic.
it.
Everybody ready to talk about AI, the topic of the week here, I feel like, at Cannes. So we've got a great group here, a variety of different perspectives. My name's Curt Larson. I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at Equativ. I look after a lot of our exchange operations as well as AI across the company and a bunch of other areas. We've got a cool panel here. I'll let you guys kind of intro yourselves, but also in the process kind of tell us what is the exciting thing that you're doing. What's the headline of exciting features that are powered by AI that you're doing? Brendan, we can start with you.
Yeah. Thanks, Curt. Brendan, Classify. We're building a contextual curation platform. And what we're doing is we've talked a lot about taxonomies. They're kind of limited into keywords, into categories. We took a very different approach in terms of looking at the sentiment of the content and are able to really quickly build these contextual segments just based on content. So content graph is this new thing. We're working with Scope 3 and a couple cool new projects and also building some agents. So excited to chat more about this.
That sounds cool. I'm Brian. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Scope 3, and we're working on a lot of things, one of which is sustainability, and very excited. I'm sure you all followed it closely that today we announced the Global Media Sustainability Framework version 1.2, which all of you are waiting anxiously for, but trying to extend industry standards across every major channel and keep up with everything changing in the digital landscape, and then also focusing on how do we make agentic AI a reality across the industry, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that too.
I've been waiting months for that. I'm very excited. Thank gosh. It is out today. Go check it out. Hey, everyone. My name is Michael Kania. I'm going to start with a little poll. How many of you have heard of Kepler? Okay. 25% of you. My job is head of communications, head of marketing at Kepler, and it is my job to make sure that everyone raises their hand at the next panel that I'm at. So I'm not doing a good job so far. But as part of my job is to help us tell the stories of our technology, tell the stories of how we are leveraging technology for our clients, and naturally, as we're all here today, that is telling the stories of how we're leveraging AI for some of our Fortune 500 brands. I think where we're most excited about it right now is for years, Kepler has proudly not had a creative offering as a marketing agency, but we recognize that AI gave us the opportunity to build from the ground up and build a creative offering that isn't just plug something into a prompt, but it is graphic designers leveraging AI to accelerate what we can offer to clients. So there's so many great offerings that we're bringing in the world of AI, but I think that's something that we're super excited about right now.
Michael, if you could I use this concept sometimes like postcard from the future. Like if you're 5 years from now, what do you want your customers to be saying about your ultimate vision? Like what have you accomplished?
God, it's tough. It's. I think I look back and I think, what was it, 3 years ago? I think March 13th, 2023 is when ChatGPT really was released to the public. And I think before that day, AI was not the buzzword that it was at this event right now. So I think AI is moving so quickly. I think there's been tons of momentum in the last 2 weeks around VO3 and how that's improving video capabilities. So I think it's really tough. It's a cliche, bad answer almost. It's tough to say where I think we'll be in 5 years. But I think Kepler's goal right now is let's rebuild technology for our clients that's going to make a difference for them. Let's not just make AI for the sake of saying we have AI. We're in active conversations with our clients around what is actually going to be impactful for you and how can we help build that? How can we build that into your systems? How can we build that into our systems? So I think at the end of the day, it's just where can we provide impact for our clients?
Yeah, so maybe your client's saying less about AI, but more about what it's actually accomplished for them. What are the outcomes, right?
Yeah, they're saying help us do X, Y, and Z, and we're assessing how do we do that. And I think right now that answer is, in a lot of ways, AI.
Yeah. So Brian, you're on, what was it, 1.2? version?
It's a big deal.
Yeah. So when you're on version 10 in 5 years from now, like, what is your vision? What do you want to have done?
I have strong doubts that AdNet Zero will get to version 10 in 5 years, since it's taken them 3 years to get to 1.2. But I'm not a math person. Okay, here's my question. How many of you think that you will be at Cannes in 5 years with your current job title at your current company? Aside from me. Because I can't get fired. Right?
My
And-
boss isn't here, so
okay,
I don't know.
I take that back. I might get fired. Well, I think if you went to everyone at Cannes and said, how much will AI disrupt my company, my business partners, my clients, the consumer ecosystem? You know, I'm guessing that most of you feel like that is going to be a disruptive change. But it's not a fair question. Because it's changing so quickly, it's impossible to forecast what is possible. Like, what is technically possible with AI is so different than it was 6 months ago. Never in our lifetimes have we seen this kind of disruptive technological change. When I was a kid, like recently, I went through the .com era, before many of you were born, and we thought that was the fastest technological change in history. Netflix went public in 1995, and 6 years later, there was the .com boom. We have done in AI, in about 24 months, what took over 6 years back then. And if you really think about the point where the vast majority of Americans, as an example, had broadband and did e-commerce, we're only to 10% of all commerce being bought online. Far more than 10% of people are using AI every single day, like in 2 years. So 5 years from now is going to be transformative in some ways, but I'll make a bet with any of you that we will still be on yachts at Cannes in 5 years, still talking about AI. That's my bet. Get ready. We're just starting.
Bring on the agents.
Brendan, you're sort of earliest in your journey. You said you came out of stealth yesterday. Did you say last week? Okay. So what's your vision? Where are you trying to go? What are you going to look like in 5 years with your product?
When we took a look at targeting and a lot of things like efficiency, and actually really quick before I finish answering that question, I came up with a new metric, like real-time building. Last night we were drinking that pink wine that we drink here in Cannes, and I was thinking return on sustainable efficiency would be an interesting new metric.
Rosé.
That's
good.
Yeah. So thinking
Tweeting it, like someone should.
So thinking about that, I mean, we actually obviously deeply care about sustainability. We deeply care about carbon. We also really care about outcomes. And when we looked at targeting, the industry had really focused on audiences and identity and really hadn't invested well in contextual and understanding what the content is. So when we built this content graph, we figured out how do we understand content and then how do we find similar content very quickly. And the cool thing, that deeply aligns with the sustainability objectives, it aligns with outcome objectives, and it just makes sure that the right ad gets on the right content. So what does it look like in 5 years? I think there will be a lot more focus on just reducing a lot of the inefficiencies that happen in the ad tech ecosystem.
You two seemed really aligned. I feel like you guys should talk more. Like, what you're trying to accomplish a lot of the same things. But Brian, one thing I wanted to ask you, since I sort of heard about this AI pivot, is like it does feel like a pivot. You know, how does it fit in with your green focus from the past? Are there areas where they complement each other? Are there areas where they actually conflict with each other? Like, how do you think about this evolution?
It's a great question. I mean, a year ago, I thought that if we could measure the carbon impact of AI, we could share it with companies, and they would use that to make better decisions about how they use AI. And I spent 6 months doing deep research into how we could make those measurements effective. We built an entire AI measurement platform, and we went to some of the biggest companies in the world to share it, and they said, we don't want to know. We are so committed to AI that we're scared that you're going to tell us we have a problem, and we don't want to not do AI. Like, don't ruin this incredible transformation. I will get fired if I don't do AI. And I was very depressed by that, because I really do believe that we have to measure these things. And so I said, okay, we need a different approach. we need to embed sustainability into AI tools that people can use so they don't realize they're doing it sustainably. And so we said, rather than let a bunch of people go build some of these tools and pieces of infrastructure without thinking about this, what if we built on the foundation of sustainability and never told anyone? So I just told everybody. But don't let out my secret that when you're using Scope 3's agentic platform, it actually has carbon measurement built in. The most accurate carbon measurement of AI in the world, with actually the largest scale deployment, will be on our platform. And we're giving those tools to anyone who wants them. So if you're brave enough to measure your AI carbon footprint, please do. But we've also been using this data to find more sustainable ways to run AI. So how do you use smaller models? How do you run in carbon neutral or low carbon data centers? How do you think about prompt engineering? Long prompts cause way more carbon than short prompts. How can we use things like vector databases to reduce the need for full scale model execution? There's all these things we've been learning, and because we're learning in public to the best extent we can, we're actually sharing a lot of this knowledge. My colleague Aya Saeed has a Substack on sustainable AI, which I strongly recommend you subscribe to. She's got a bunch of really cool things that she's sharing in there. We're actually recommending policy changes. So we're working with state, local, and national governments to try to help them think about this. And to the best of our ability, when companies are ready to get off the AI at all costs bandwagon and go to, maybe more responsible or sustainable AI, they're going to have a bunch of open source and commercial capabilities that we've been dog fooding, using ourselves for years to help them with. So there's a bit of a evolution, a recognition that we're ahead of the commercial market, but it doesn't mean we can't do both things. Be incredibly effective at helping the industry adopt agentic AI, and also build in sustainability by design.
So I guess all else equal, if you're running the same campaign, an agentic-driven campaign versus a traditionally targeted and optimized campaign, does that influence the carbon? Which campaign would have more carbon emissions? Does it matter? It's a different factor.
Well, the problem is that running a campaign can have 1,000 times difference in terms of carbon footprint depending on how you run it. And so if you just are very naive and you run a programmatic campaign with no targeting on the open web, it will have a very, very high carbon footprint. If you run that same campaign through, let's say, a green media product from a partner like Equativ, the carbon footprint will drop significantly and performance will go up dramatically. And we've proved this again and again and again. And so, as with all things, if you're doing a really, really efficient job buying, you may see that an AI-driven campaign is even more carbon than the current traditional way. But I can promise you that the worst of programmatic is way worse, at least today, than anything you could imagine doing with AI. And so I think we're all, by measuring, by thinking about this, by caring about it, we want to move towards effectiveness and efficiency, and we should measure and find the most effective and efficient ways to advertise.
Brian, I'm curious to jump into the question. You had noted that you went to a number of companies kind of inquiring if they wanted to learn about their AI impact, and you noted that a number of them essentially wanted to put their head in the sand. Do you feel, were there companies that were more interested, and what do you think the difference was in those that were interested versus not interested in knowing?
No one wasn't interested. It was just a question of, would they let us tell them? And we found this in the advertising industry. Like 3 years ago when we started, we came to Cannes and said, you guys should all measure your carbon. And a lot of folks were like, I'm scared to know what it is. And it was only when some of our brave partners, I'll point to Ben from Equativ, who were willing to go be out front and help us convince the industry and do case studies, that it actually performed better. All of a sudden, it wasn't scary because we had clear products that we built that were greener, that performed better. And so we kind of broke through by productizing sustainability, finding early adopters, and then delivering on those case studies. So if you're in the audience and you're thinking, man, we do a lot of AI and we'd like to make it, sustainable, that would be amazing. But I also think that just talking about it helps a lot. Yeah. Every engineer that thinks, do I really need to run this massive model in Virginia where it's coal powered, the answer is no. You do not need to run complex, expensive models in Virginia.
Did you have a comment? Or?
I was just going to ask another follow-up question.
Wow, this is great.
This is the interview, Brian.
We have three interviewers.
I feel like I'm getting grilled.
What other bullet points in terms of like increasing efficiency, sustainability, do you think it makes sense for any ad tech company to be thinking about, in addition to efficient ad delivery, data centers?
Yeah, I mean, I think carbon in general is a good proxy for efficiency. So if you say, I'm getting extraordinary performance from my campaigns and I can measure that, it's hard to buy well without efficiency. So I'm not saying it's not possible. The challenge is that measurement turns out to be hard. You may have heard people talk about measurement incessantly for 30 years in the digital advertising space. And I can also promise you in 5 years, we will still be complaining about measurement, and 50 years, because humans are weird and do strange things, and no one can explain why they did anything. So why would we think we can measure why humans do things? But I think that is part of the challenge, is if you don't have a hard performance metric to fall back on, it's really easy to lose track of all the hops and all the things in the middle. And so the short answer is, if you measure, you can find those efficiencies, and if you don't measure, you can't. You could also trust partners that credibly do good work. And so one thing we've built is the Scope 3 verified program, where we actually do almost an audit of companies to assess their practices so that we can accurately represent what they're doing from a sustainability perspective. And so that's another just easy shortcut is, do your partners disclose their practices? So we can talk about this all day, but I do not want to hog this panel.
Yeah, so speaking of, we'll ask someone else a question, right? So Brendan, I think contextual targeting is something that in my mind has been in the kind of like problem solved category for a while. But you're obviously seeing an opportunity there. Like, what is it that is, what part of that problem was unsolved, and like what's the value add of the solution?
Yeah, another good question. And I'll use an example from a story last week chatting with a partner who wanted to share a list of keywords, negative keywords. And once I started explaining, kind of showing what Content Graph does, they realized pretty quickly that that concept doesn't really apply anymore. So the old school way of thinking through keyword targeting, category targeting, when semantic search is related to content, and you can find, much like a human understands how content works, it's much easier to find these relationships. And thanks to things that we talked about, vector databases, embeddings, like all these really efficient ways that you can use machine learning to really understand the relationships. We've built this effectively Google for content across the open web. So the old school concept of kind of just, and I think it's applicable for companies like news, in areas where an old machine learning system might grab a word like Trump and just assume that that's disqualified out. We actually have a much better understanding to know it could be an article about poker, and it could be somebody playing a trump card. So we don't have to disqualify that thing just based on a specific keyword. And I think the deeper you understand what the actual intent of the content is, or what the sentiment of the content is, the more you can find similar content and do things without using the word brand safety or suitability. You can make sure that the right ad gets against the right content in a safe way.
Yeah, I think there's been a renewed focus, and there was a panel right here an hour ago on how do we fund serious journalism, right? And how do we avoid the brand safety filters just excluding serious journalism, right? It sounds like this is a solution to that, right? You can have a much better way of doing that.
Yeah, it's very helpful.
Cool. Well, Michael, you guys are trying to do a lot of things related to creative, right? And sort of automating and improving creative. There's a whole aspect of the industry that's involved in how we create creative. If we assume AI can do all of that better, like what does that look like for creative people, for creative agencies, for that sort of whole function? Where do you see that going?
Yeah, I think there's a unique tension to be talking about this topic here at Cannes, because as we look out on the Palais here, this is a celebration of creative. This is a celebration of the videographers, the graphic designers, the humans that make incredible creative. And I think there is a tension between AI and creative development. You've got creatives that say AI can only go so far, and you've got AI evangelists, technologists, curious just how far they can take it. And I think Kepler has come at it with a perspective that, like I said earlier, is unique because we didn't have a creative team. We proudly didn't offer creative. We knew our expertise. We are media planners, we're in analytics, and we said we'll leave creative to the creatives. But AI has presented an opportunity for us to build from the ground up while other companies might be trying to build from a large, arguably bloated team down and leverage AI within their creative. So I think we're really excited about what we're doing because it's lean, it's quick, it's cheaper, but undoubtedly, if I were discussing this topic, 100 yards over in that building, I think there would be people grabbing me afterwards and saying like, we won't be replaced, I can't be replaced, they can't do X, Y, and Z, AI will never be this. And I think realistically it's probably in the middle ground somewhere. And I think we're just trying to find what that middle ground is and exploring it every day.
Well, I guess what would your advice be to those folks that seem concerned and threatened?
I think my people in my company are the greatest in the world. But our creative team, I think they are absolutely incredible, but they're at the forefront exploring. They're trying to understand what this industry is, where it's going. And I think that's true of anything. We all are in some form of ad tech, and we are using every day the newest technology. And I think this is a new thing to explore. It's a new tool. And like I said earlier, it's about impact. It's about what's going to drive value for your own company, for the companies you work with. And my advice would be for the lovely graphic designers and creatives to just always be curious.
I guess you started to allude to this a bit, but open question to the panelists, like what are some of the risks of AI? What are you trying to make sure you avoid as you go down this more AI-powered future? Like,
oh God, our legal team has been hesitant and I don't want to say holding us back from the start, but I think naturally there's so many legal considerations around where you're sourcing what is powering AI. And so I think that's always kind of in the back of our mind. And I think it's, especially as we are working with clients and Fortune 500 clients, we have to make sure we're super buttoned up across the board in what we are doing for them, how we are using their data. So I think it's interesting because AI is designed to be super quick. It's designed to be able to give you something at a rapid notice, a rapid moment. But as much as we want to, we can't just do that for our clients. We still have to have the conversations. We have to make sure our data security practices entirely buttoned up, make sure legal's buttoned up. So I think it's a necessity, but it kind of slows things down a little bit in an era where we want to all move really quick.
Any other thoughts on that topic?
That's a good point. I think there's a quote from Jensen Huang from NVIDIA that says, AI won't steal your job. People who know AI will steal your job. How we look at it from a content perspective, because creative generation is so much easier with AI, you also need better detection systems. And you need the ability to understand what's happening in that article written by AI, graphic written by AI, deepfake videos, things like this. So better detection for all the additional noise coming in. That's also going to be really important.
I made a mistake earlier this year. I made lots of mistakes, but I made one. Is I was on a panel at Ramp Up, and I said, they asked me to moderate an AI panel, and I said I will only do it if every participant brings a demo, like demos or it didn't happen, because I feel like everyone talks about AI all the time, but is it real? And so people brought their demos, and then I had this realization that actually demos are so easy in the world of AI. You can prototype things so quickly that actually if you don't have a demo, you're not trying very hard. What I think is actually really going to be the challenge is, what does enterprise AI look like? Like what you're talking about with lawyers, imagine trying to sell AI into a big corporation. They're going to ask so many questions. And so even if we can go fast and build quickly, the kind of restrictions that we're going to want to have to make sure we're doing this in a responsible, safe way are pretty significant. And so I think one of the challenges is that we're not going to be held back by our creativity. We're not going to be held back by our ability to iterate. We're actually going to be held back by the foundational things that we don't know yet. Like we've all talked for years about a campaign hierarchy. We all know the names of the things. When I say a creative, I think you can all think of what I mean, right? A person or did you think it was an ad? Why do we use the same name for both? Somebody fix that. But in a world of AI, what do you call the text that goes into a chat that's sponsored? It's not a sponsored link. It's not a search result. It's not creative. It's not an ad. Is it a snippet? Is it a chat bit? Somebody come up with a name for that thing. And if we don't even know the words for it, how are we going to get to a point? Someone said to me, why is the IAB Tech Lab not figuring out the standards for this? I'm like, I don't think the IAB Tech Lab even knows what we're talking about. They're not sitting here going, man, we need standards for something we don't even know how to use. They're trying to build a server-side ad server, 2000 called and wants its business problem back. In 2000, we were trying to figure out ad serving. That is not a 2025 problem. Our 2025 problem is no one's going to publishers anymore, right? We're all just chatting. Half of you are on your phones being like, what the hell is he talking about? AI, generate me a new name for that snippet of thing that's an ad, right? That is the problem of AI. We don't have any idea what's happening. And when we do, it's too late, it's changed. So all of those enterprise capabilities, we are so far ahead of regulation, we're so far ahead of standards, we're so far ahead of any concept that most people have. My ask is simple. Let's not do this with acronyms this time. Let's not have acronym soup that no one understands. Let's try to talk in simple human terms that we can all understand so that new people can pick this up and keep up and actually help us drive forward, as opposed to spending a year trying to figure out jargon. A jargon-free CAN is my dream. Could we do CAN without any acronyms? That would be like a wonderful start.
I do feel slightly attacked as a member of the IAB Tech Lab board.
Can you just say Internet Advertising Bureau? No acronyms.
There is an AI working group, and there's stuff going on AI in the Tech Lab. I just want to clarify. Okay, we're almost out of time. We can do a few final comments, but any questions burning on your minds right now? Yes.
I'm kind of curious if you describe the
You need to use the microphone because this is being filmed and tens of people are going to watch it.
Excellent. I'm kind of curious about the classify user flow. Are you just passing data back to advertisers and publishers? Are you creating a new placement? Are you a tag on the editorial website? Can you tell us about how it works?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Feel free to check it out. Tryclassify.com. Pop in a prompt. We'll figure out what the brand is, what the product is, what the audience is really quickly. And then you can just build a segment, fine-tune the segment, push it out into an SSP, and then start trading on it pretty quickly. So deal ID or contextual segment.
Okay, so rapid fire, like 30-second response. If each of you could kind of ask something of the industry and of the audience. Actually, I think, Brian, you already got your chance. You asked for no acronyms. Michael, what's your ask?
That's a good question. I think I would be curious on. I'm trying to wing it off the spot now. I don't know that I have a great answer for it.
More acronyms.
Maybe more acronyms. Come back to me.
Okay, Brendan.
Quick answer. A lot of friends outside the advertising industry have been laid off just because big companies are like, let's just kill this entire organization. There's a lot of layoffs happening. This industry has been more resistant to AI quickly, and I think if we do start to take that approach, just be empathetic towards people, have better plans. If there's changes in how companies are structured, figure that out better and provide a better experience for anybody that might have to pivot into a different role. But the way that it's been done for the big tech companies, I think, has been pretty awful.
All right, I'll jump in. I think simplicity. I think this kind of builds off the no acronyms, but I think this industry is incredibly complex. There is a steep learning curve. There is a ton of technology. And I think the more that we can simplify that and help it make sense to, the most junior members coming into the industry, the easier it's going to be to get great talent in this industry.
All right. Well, with that, we're out of time. Really appreciate all of you. It was a great conversation. Thank you.
Thanks
Thanks
for
for
Thank
having
you.
us.
Thanks, everyone.